Muge, what is this?
C'est le palais. It's the place where the magic happens.
As promised last week, this episode is going to be again about Cannes, and this time we're going to go a little bit deeper. So without further ado, here are 5 things we want to share with you about Cannes. Number 1, when to send your screenplay to sellers and buyers.
One of the things that I personally know because I've been in their shoes, and also what everyone says in the producers network is that there are certain times you don't send stuff to sellers and buyers because they're overwhelmed with ideas and scripts. And for example, in Cannes, they're not there to acquire films that are not made. They're there for 2 reasons. First, to sell their slate, the lineup they already have, and the same person or another colleague, if he's in charge of acquiring films for the movie to set for the company to sell, they see more advanced projects they already know about, or they see films and buy them. Since we don't fit in none of these criteria at the moment, it's good to go and talk, but it's not you don't finish the business actually. Even the selling and buying doesn't finish in Cannes, just after the week after.
Number 2, IMDb matters. My producer had a badge, but I didn't have one, which means that I was not allowed to enter any tent and market, and I could not meet with anyone inside the Cannes official zone. But you can go and buy a temporary badge. The only problem is that you need to prove that you are from the business and you have experience. Fortunately, I had my producer, so that means that I was linked to a production company, but it was not enough. They also wanted to make sure that my name was linked to something professional. And what did they do? They checked my IMDb credit. I do have IMDb credit, and the reason why is because I used Without a Box a few years ago when I was sending my short films to film festival. The thing is, in the last 5 years, all the projects I've made, I haven't used Without a Box. Mostly it was online projects. So if I hadn't done these old short films and I hadn't had this IMDb credit, I wouldn't have been able to have my badge for Cannes, which means I wouldn't have been able to go anywhere inside Cannes. The lesson here, if you're an online filmmaker and don't have an IMDb credit yet, is consider finding a way to get one. This really made a difference for me. It allowed me to attend many meetings, and I am very, very happy this investment from the past turned out to be useful today. Lesson number 3, you need prep and experience. I talked about prep in the previous episode, so if you haven't seen it yet, consider watching it. As for experience, this is what Muge says.
This is why I didn't want to go to Cannes in the first place. For emerging producers or young producers who hasn't been in the industry and don't know how it works, it might be very hard to get connections and talk to really anyone in Cannes. Even if you have the badge, people might be a little skeptical, because when you go to these kind of environments, you see a lot of people who are overexcited, who don't really know the realities of the film world or financing or how hard it is, just bullshitting. And even you have the badge, it will be hard for you to find the people to listen to you. If I wasn't in sales and I wasn't buying or selling for Turkey for such a long time, it would be hard for me to reach out to the companies and the people that I previously known, and because I had solid business relationships with them. My advice to new producers or directors would be, if they are not getting a badge, and if they don't want to spend money and time, because Cannes is just 5-6 days, very intense and very expensive, I would advise people to go to smaller festivals. It's still my idea. I haven't changed it since we talked a couple of months ago. I still think for people who are very new in the industry, it's more important to catch these people when they're not really at the top of their stress level or they're not very busy.
Number 4, labs. Here's what's important to understand about labs.
They have so many submissions, like 500 submissions, 300 submissions, and only 5 or 9 or 10 or 12 of these submissions make it to the lab or to the co-production market. Of course, there are some projects which were already in the radar of the people in charge of these institutions, and there are also directors or producers who are already in charge of in their radar. So let's say that they have been saving a couple of places for the people they've been following for a couple of months or years, but it leaves you little space.
And basically what that means is that labs are really working like film festivals. There is an official way to apply, but of course programmers have their eyes on the work of filmmakers they've programmed the year before, the films that are recommended to them by people they trust. If you know no one, you can always use a normal channel, but there are a lot of people who know a lot of people, and these connections is going to help them get a little bit more attention, maybe waive the fee, maybe waive the deadline. And this is maybe not fair, but we don't live in a fair world, and people need ways to filter. This is just how they filter. So if you have 9 positions for a lab, or 15, whatever, it's unlikely there's really 9 positions for this lab. Number 5, it is possible to capitalize on your social media connections. I've been doing mentorless for many years, and I've been following people who've been following me back, especially on Twitter, and I haven't used those connections for a very long time. Even though I could send them a private message, I haven't done it. But once in Cannes, if I knew this person was in Cannes as well, I would send them a private message. Some people didn't answer, and that's totally normal, and actually that's what I was predicting. But some people did reply. So if you're connected and have a Twitter, the hard work you're putting now might pay off, in 6 months, a year, or several years from now. Just keep track of what's happening, the people that are interesting to you and whom you might be interesting to, and try it out and see what's happening. And before we close this episode, 2 extra tips from Muge and I about clothing and food. This is what Muge has to tell you about food if you're planning to go to Cannes.
You should never eat on any place on the Croisette. This is the main street where the stars hang out, where every place is very expensive. If not expensive, the food is really bad. Go to the little French cafes or bistros in the back streets, which you will really find gems. And you can also meet a lot of fellow filmmakers who are just having dinner or having coffee there. So it's a really good way of networking, not eating on the Croisette, but just going back. There is the Majestic Hotel on Croisette where the stars and the rich producers, big producers hang out. But the indie producers has created their own Majestic Hotel, which is a small bar in the back streets called Petit Majestic. The bar itself is very small, but when the weather is good, hundreds of people are just out there drinking beer and networking, or just planning about the parties to go after this drink. And it's really, really a fun place to be.
As for me, I think one of my biggest surprise was to realize that the dress code in Cannes is not as crazy as I thought it would be. Of course, it's very glamorous, but only if you're going to VIP parties. During daytime, people are very casually dressed. I think the right balance is to look serious and professional, but also find clothing where you feel good. There's no need for high heels. I'm saying that to you ladies. There's no need to make it look crazier than it already is. You're working all day long. You're changing setting all the time. And it's important that you feel good about what you're wearing. Otherwise, it's just going to make it worse for you. This is it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find the advice useful. If you've been to Cannes or any similar big festival and have a different experience or have learned other stuff, don't hesitate to share with us in the comment section. It's very interesting and important to share those type of information, because otherwise, you really have no clue what to expect and you can miss the mark. If you're enjoying the journey, consider subscribing. If you want to help out, consider sharing. Be creative, be inspired, and I will see you next week for a new episode of the Film Log.